Welcome back to Interior Analysis. I am your host for this episode, David Jones, and I am gathered with my ever so handsome co-hosts. Whoever wants to go first, or I can say your names.
I'm Evan Westman.
I'm the handsomer one, Jelani Kelly.
I won't argue with that.
And we're talking a little bit of an older film today, but it's pretty much a classic to anyone, I think, who's into that kind of wave from the 90s that's taken over cinema. Seven by David Fincher. And I guess we'll start with first impressions. This is whose first time? I know it's not Evan's, but is this your first time watching this, Jelani? I assume it is.
Yes, but I knew the ending.
All
so
right.
that sucks. Yeah.
It's a little hard not to at this point.
I figured as much. But were you still able to enjoy it? Or did you find it lacking? Like, was it slow for you because of that?
I want to say a little bit, yeah. Like when they were doing the detective stuff, the detecting thing, I didn't need most of that. But like seeing how the serial killer, well, this is to be expected from me. So seeing how the serial killer enacted the 7 sentence was kind of crazy. Prior to the ending, constantly feeding that guy, the whole thing with the lust, that was awful. Just hearing about it, we didn't even. I'm glad they didn't show it, but hearing about it was just bad. It was crazy. Yeah, I still enjoyed it though. I'm pretty sure the ending was spoiled for me, and I'm pretty sure I've mentioned Watch Mojo before, but for some reason I've seen Watch Mojo top 10s all the way back in high school, and some of these spoilers have stuck with me for movies, and this was another one of them. I knew Pitt was gonna kill someone, but I thought it'd be Morgan Freeman. I already knew someone was Envy, but thought it was Freeman until Doe, really nearly until Doe said himself that he was Envy. And he tried living a normal person's life. I was like, oh, Pitt's gonna kill him, not. I was like, don't kill Morgan, bro.
I wonder if that's intentional. Because I didn't thought of that, but I think you could read it with intention that I don't read the character like this, but you could think of Somerset as being this is the life I wish I had.
Talking to his wife and all that, right? That's it. I didn't really have anything major.
I have a question. Since you knew the twist, and I assume you knew Kevin Spacey was the perpetrator of the twist and the bad guy, because I feel like that's pretty well known too. Everyone kind of knows he's the guy who says everything. Were you surprised how little of him is in this movie?
Not really. I wasn't expecting, because we didn't see him until the end, all the way up until we actually see him walk in the thing. I didn't think he was in it at all.
So you didn't know the Kevin Spacey thing then?
I think I didn't remember. I think I knew for a while and then forgot that he was in it. And then and then he popped. I thought they weren't gonna show the serial killer at all. They weren't gonna catch him, and I didn't know that he's the one that. I knew Pitt was gonna kill somebody. That's why I thought Morgan was gonna die. I keep calling them by their real names. I forget. Somerset is Pitt, and I'm gonna keep calling them by their.
No,
real
Somerset's Morgan Freeman.
Okay,
Mills
see?
is Pitt.
No,
Yeah.
See, that's why I'm not even gonna try.
For me, that actually carries kind of a through line for me, because I watched this movie at a very young age because my parents loved it, and I want to say I was 10, and I didn't remember a ton of it. I remembered the big parts and the twist and everything, and I remember hearing from people later when I was a teenager who were finding the movie for the first time. They were comparing him to Hannibal Lecter and being oh my god, he has such little screen time, but it's such a good performance and it's so captivating. And I was I watched this movie 5 years ago. What do you mean he has such little screen time? And watching it now, wow, he's in 2 scenes, and it's amazing how my brain, as a kid, all the police stuff, all that kind of rudimentary stuff that floods the first act, all just went away. And I just remembered that bit of acting, because that car scene and that exchange, wow, that is captivating.
I don't know if he was acting.
Well,
Yeah.
well, that's what his brother said. That's a confirmed quote from his brother. Do you know that?
No.
That stays with me. His brother said, and I quote, he's been praised for all these roles and given awards and accolades for them, but the truth of the matter is he's had to act and work for none of it. He's just playing himself.
That's scary.
I've wondered that about some of his roles. I think the fact that he plays like kind of despicable people a lot of times makes like rewatching Kevin Spacey movies, knowing what we know now, a little easier than like with
1000%.
some other actors. Because it's like, okay, you're not supposed to like him anyway.
Exactly. I thought that literally watching this movie.
Yeah.
I was like, because I think I've only seen Baby Driver. I watched Baby Driver again after everything, and now this would be the second one. And I was like, he's in such little of it, and he plays like the worst person in this film. So my emotions just ring true. I don't feel like I'm being disconnected from the art at all. So that's interesting.
Yeah, even like House of Cards, I feel like is relatively palatable on that level, because like Frank Underwood's kind of like a bad guy that you enjoy watching, but he is a bad guy. Like, there's no real ambiguity there.
Yeah, to us. To him, he's the child of God, serving and being righteous.
Right.
Which is fascinating. But what was your experience, Evan? How many times have you seen this movie, and how did it ring to you this time?
So this was my third, and this was definitely my favorite time watching it. I did not appreciate the themes of it at all, or like really see them to speak of outside of the bar scene the first two times I saw it. I think I watched it like maybe a year and a half ago, and before that I saw it when I was 18. But I know my initial experience was very tainted by the fact that like my mom hyped this movie up to me a lot as a kid. You guys won't, not knowing her, you won't be able to appreciate how out of character it is for my mom to like a movie like this, or have even seen it to begin with. But she like told me about it when I was pretty little, like a few times, and I kind of had in my head that like the deaths were going to be like the most shocking thing ever. So when I did see it as an 18-year-old, I was like, oh, it's not like nearly as bad as I was anticipating. So I wasn't like, it didn't really hold any shock value for me like that. But yeah, I definitely gained a lot of appreciation for it this time, and I think I will on rewatch. It still ranks pretty much like upper middle Finches for me. That's what I call Fincher movies, Finches. I think it's number 4 below Social Network, Fight Club, and Gone Girl. But it definitely got better for me this time. 2 other quick things before we move on that I just want to make sure I give warning for. One, probably just content and language warning, just, given what we're talking about. We're probably going to go to some darkish places. Also, I might spoil the Watchmen comic and No Country for Old Men, so just warning for that.
Well, to anyone, if that's a spoil for the Watchmen comics, shame on you. Shame. Go read them.
I only read it within the past month or so,
but you read it.
I did read it,
and that's the key.
I haven't.
So that's what they have to do. They have to all read it, because that's art right there. Alan Moore is a great writer. But yeah, back to 7. So we're going to start with you, Jelani, and I'm going to go with this tidbit, which I didn't learn until just doing a little bit of quick Googling on this film. But so this is his second directorial film. I don't know if he did any other film work before that, but for Fincher, this is his second. His first out the gate is, of course, Alien 3, which, to anyone who doesn't know, it didn't really go that well. It didn't make a lot of money. Although it's become a cult favorite among the Alien fans, it did not do that well in the box office. So I think there was a bit of not only desperation for Fincher just relating out of a personal level from someone who would want to make films. I can see that being oh my God, I got my moment to make it and it didn't do what it needed to do. And now will I ever get to make another film? So I can see why the story behind the script and why he fought for it was so kind of prominent, because it was kind of him fighting for his own career. But so backstory for the listeners, this script, which was written by Andrew Kevin Walker, was originally optioned by an Italian film company, but there was some shady stuff behind the scenes and the company went out of business and they sold all their rights to New Line Cinema, which was this up and coming, New Line came out in the 80s and it's the house that Freddy built. Good old horror fans. But in the 90s, it became this up and coming kind of place for independent filmmakers to find their voice and make different things that Hollywood, this kind of studios weren't making. And so once they got the script, which fits perfectly, Seven fits perfectly into where New Line was going, executives wanted to just take it and remove the ending, flip it around, change everything. And Fincher fought really hard, pretty much said he wasn't going to make the film unless they keep the ending true to Walker's script. And in doing so, it became a massive success. It was made for like 30 million and it made a little over 300 million. So I think we all agree like keeping the endings is the best decision, but can we imagine a different world where the villain doesn't win?
No, the villain, the ending is what made the movie for me. Like the fact that he dies but wins, like that's crazy. All dude had to do was just not shoot him and let justice prevail, quote unquote. His viewpoint or the viewpoint of the justice system in this movie is not great. It's not positive. No, I can't imagine a different or better ending than this.
Did they have an alternate ending in mind?
Nothing that I could find, like anything specific. I just know that from anything I found was executives just wanted to change the ending. Whatever that ambiguous ending was that they didn't like, whether it was the head in the box, the fact that he died, the fact that a cop is a bad guy and becomes a killer, the fact that Morgan Freeman can't save him, whatever, or all of that, whatever bothered them, they wanted it out. And Fincher was just like, nope, not gonna do it, won't make the film, which is ballsy for someone who's made one movie and it bombed.
Yeah. And even in hindsight, like I do not think you could call this movie propaganda. I don't see it as such. I don't think they're portrayed poorly, but I don't think they're portrayed well either. Like
I'm glad they're not portrayed well.
Yeah, because it's honest, because it shows both sides. Because you can't say Morgan Freeman's a bad cop or detective, and you can't say the other police force members are good. And they even have conversations about it where they're like, yeah, like the people who should be doing this job aren't really doing this job. People want to go home. This is a 9 to 5, and then you see it in action when he's asking basic questions, and the cops are like, "That's not what I'm here for. They're dead. That's the scene. Let's go." It's clear that kind of disconnect for humanity, and it's really, I think, a center point of conflict, at least inner for Somerset.
Or the SWAT guys too, where he was like, they live for this, where they were going through the building with their big old guns, knocking down doors and shouting at people.
Yeah, definitely reflects studies I've heard about like real law enforcement. I forget, there's some law that like allows them to break into a house with probable cause. It's like bullshit. I don't know what it's called off the top.
Yeah. Oh, that bothered me a little bit. They didn't really get reprimanded for dude kicking down the door as much as a big deal as Morgan Freeman, Somerset made out of it. Anyway, topic, villain wins. He dies but wins. It kind of reminds me of what would happen if Joker were to get Batman to kill him. Batman would break his one rule. The Joker would be dead, but the villain wins still.
I mean, I understand. It's a very that's what I mean. I immediately thought about Harvey when he's just saying like, "Do it, become vengeance." I'm like, all right, we've seen this in a few popular movies, but to me, I think this movie does it the best. I think it does it the most complex, the most complicated, the most nuanced, the most human. And every time I know it's going to happen, I know her head's going to be in that box. I know what's going to go down, but I just can't not watch, and I can't not feel so involved. Even if I didn't watch the other like hour and a half of this film, like if you just started from like the last 30 minutes on and you just play that, like eyes glued, ass in seat, eyes glued.
That's really all I need. I don't need the other.
Yeah, I think there's still valuable stuff in the earlier part of the movie, but I will agree, like, the stuff you remember is the last act. You don't remember a lot of the detective work in the first 90 minutes.
But I think you're 100% right, because we do remember the last act because the other parts of the movie do have important stuff. Like, we're only able to say that, at least me, I'm only able to say that because I have gone through the first 2 acts of that film and seen it enough that, like, when I get to that point, like, I know where we are and it's good. But 100%, if those first 2 acts didn't play out, and that's why I think it's really methodical in its approach, if they didn't play out in that certain way, I don't think I would be as gripped and so captivated when everything's finally coming to a head because it was orchestrated so perfectly before.
How many times have you seen this movie? Is it is
Like
it more than
5.
7 times? Okay.
I really liked it as a kid. Like I found it so fascinating. Just their two, like their dynamic alone, because I was so like all that mattered to me was characters when I was a kid. I just wanted to feel like I wanted to like hang out with the people, and I really liked Somerset and Mills, and I was like, like these people are cool. Like they disagree, but they agree, and like they're friends, and they can give each other shit. And then I never really got into like the Tracy stuff until I got a little older, and then like everything with Kevin Spacey, I just found so chilling. Like I was like, oh my god, like I only seen this level of cold and like despicable and deplorable in like 80s cheesy horror films, but like this is like so much closer and truer to life and could actually happen, and someone could pull this off, and that was terrifying to me.
Mm-hmm. Evan had a comment in this topic. Your last one.
My last one. Yeah, I was thinking today that I think John Doe is a better edgelord villain than a lot of the ones that we've gotten, both before and since. Like Joker, particularly the 2019 version of Joker. Tyler Durden, Travis Bickle. Take your pick of others that I forgot.
Who's Bickle?
Taxi Driver.
Oh, Bickle the Pickle.
Because, like, people kind of have taken, like, those characters and sort of glorified them, which I don't know, like, people have debated how intentional that is on the part of those filmmakers. I've never heard of anyone dressing up as John Doe for Halloween or, like, not admiring, but being into him in the way that they are with the other characters. And I think it's as simple as, like, he's just creepy, he's not cool, and I'm not going to get too into it because I'm not well versed enough, but I think that's the move for edgelord characters moving forward. More like this, although don't have Kevin Spacey play them, but have someone give his performance where they're actually acting and are chill in real life. But I think he's still a good villain. Like, he does check off, like, the same... I think he hits the same notes that those other edgelord villains do, but it's less validated, I think. And like,
he's not the main character.
And he's not the main character, yeah, which those other three that I mentioned are. And, like, his worldview is acknowledged, but it is ultimately refuted. And I think you can miss that, but I don't feel like it's asking you to be like, oh, look at how the villain's right. I never get that sense. Like, his hypocrisy is shown fairly blatantly, mostly in the car scene where he's like, you see all this ugliness, like these people who murder, and Brad Pitt's like, murderers like you. Yeah, shut up.
And that acting in that moment, the way he can't even handle hearing himself be called a murderer, he just has to scream "she" again and restart the sentence. Like,
yeah,
everyone's just not there. He's in his own world. It's chilling. Great scene. If that's how it's truly written, which I assume it is, because they didn't want to touch the ending. Very, very well written. Even down to the setting. Like, that's what was sticking out to me the most this time. I was like, damn, it rains a ton. Like, this is the rainiest week in whatever city they're in. And then the ending where, like, obviously this dude has something big planned, and we are all supposed to know that because our two boys who have been carrying us through this film have just said to their, like, superior, you're wrong, this guy's not done, it's gonna keep going. So we obviously know something big's coming, and we've seen the level of theatrics and displays with the gluttony and the lust and all the different scenarios and greed that he will set up, and draw in blood and kick people till they burst and tie someone to a bed for a year. Like, he'll go crazy extents. And I found it so smart this time, and I never noticed it before, to have the final act be in such a barren, empty spot. And they even talk about it in the dialogue, just to, like, hit it over the head again, where it's like, nothing out here, there could not, no envoy out here come in, no, like, no one's gonna come and mess us up out here, there's no one planted to come out and get us. And I was like, this is so smart. Like, I never took setting into consideration until film school, but just thinking about how much that matters, and how much it matters just to, like, bring the defenses down of your audience subconsciously there, where it's like, okay, at least we can see everything open. So, like, it can't be that crazy. Like, what is he gonna do? Like, let's bring it down. and then for it to have that huge of a reveal, it's very, very well written, very smart.
Yeah. I was noticing like the symbolism too of like, and I don't think it's trying super hard to like hammer this home, but this time I was noticing like, oh, I see the intention of like it's been raining all week when the detectives are confused on what's happening and everything's unclear, and now in the last act, when everything is revealed, the sun's out and there's not a cloud in the sky. It's like, okay, I see you, Andrew Kevin Walker.
Yeah, and aesthetically, it fits the mood so well. Like, there's so many layers it hits off. Where my friend would watch it and be like, "Well, it's raining because it's a crime story. It's a noir. That's what they do." And it's like that genius. Everything about this film just surprised me this time. Where I was like, "It is really well thought out. Like, it's not just good. Like, it's really good."
Yeah. I think there's a lot of layers of this that I haven't seen yet that I will probably, hopefully, pick up on later watches.
Me too. I think there's a lot more that I still have yet to fully grasp, and I'm excited to see how I think about the film or feel about the film in like 5 years' time or something. I think this is kind of a good point to like go into my topic a little bit with Tone, because I think what you guys said about him not being the main character, his viewpoint being refuted almost immediately, his hypocrisy being called out blatantly and also mocked by Somerset, really makes it easy to kind of stomach what he's doing, all his crimes, all of this terrible stuff with a mythology or a religion, because a lot of people would see that and like kind of get grossed out about it, and rightfully so, because sometimes when they do that, it is gross and it's just like shock. I remember, even if it's true, like I remember I talked to my one of his like biggest, it wasn't even a horror movie, but just like film triggers when he was a kid was his family showed him Passion of the Christ, and just how like gruesome that film is. And like, I don't know if any of that happened. If it did, sure. If it didn't, okay. But wow. And I'm glad this film, you don't see the gruesome, you see it after. It's smart about how much you see and when you see, and you always kind of, if it's that bad, you don't see it, or you get someone's reaction before so you can kind of like push it away. And then they don't beat the mythology or the religion or faith too much that it's like isolating. Like to me, I always think of Da Vinci Code with this. Like, I've seen Da Vinci Code like 3 times, 2 when I was a kid and 1 when I was like 18, and I've never been able to get into the film. And I don't think it has anything to do with the Dan Brown, because I know his books are really popular, but I'm taking it more as like the film. Like, don't know if there's like a certain level of like lack of knowledge within the Christian or Catholic faith that I have, that like it feels like isolating and I'm not following, but it feels so like there's an element to that film that I would enjoy more if I knew those things. And because I don't have those things, I'm not able to get fully into it. But with this film, like, I don't have to know any of the deadly sins or any of like the backstory behind the quotes he picks or anything like that. And I'm still fully engrossed in the mystery, and I'm still fully engrossed in the characters. And I enjoy that.
Yeah, I don't know if I interpreted your topic the way that you meant it, but I was looking at it when I saw your topic. I was thinking of it on the level of like, you don't need to see the symbolism to get it here. Like, there is a surface level plot that functions just fine on its own, and you can just enjoy that part of it. But there's also symbolism under almost everything if you care to look. And I think there's so few movies, even really good ones, that fail to walk that line. Like Parasite, great movie. I think there's a couple parts of that where if you're only looking at the plot literally, it's not going to make sense. And that's not to criticize Parasite. I think that's exactly what it wants to do. But this is perhaps a harder line to walk almost. Because I feel like most movies err to one side or the other, where they're like, we're all plot, and then maybe we'll try for symbolism, but it's not really there, or we didn't really put enough thought into it, ahem, Joker. But there's also the other side of it, which I feel like is everything you read in like high school English, and probably even before that. Like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but I thought of Perfect Day for Banana Fish, which is this J.D. Salinger short story, which the plot of it really doesn't make any sense, like a literal level.
I mean, the title doesn't either.
Yeah, but apparently the whole thing is like PTSD. It's been a while. I don't remember exactly what the symbolism is, but everything in it is symbolic, and like J.D. Salinger flipped out when they changed one comma to a semicolon. That's a separate thing. But like I've always been annoyed with stories like that too, where it's like you need to know what the flowers mean, what all of these colors symbolize if you're going to get any of it, because if not, it's
Yeah.
just about a girl and her dad going up and down a hill for no goddamn reason. I've never liked those.
I've never been a fan of those either. And what I was thinking of when I sent that text yesterday, I was thinking of different like movies, but then also it was mainly like stories and older stories, like you were saying, that came to mind. And oddly enough, and I did not remember this being referenced in the film at all, but like the first story that came to mind, I was like, like that high school story, Paradise Lost. And then I was like, oh my god, they literally, when I was looking up stuff about this film again, I was like, oh my god, yeah, they literally said it. And they're taking
I think
quotes from
Canterbury
it.
Tales, from what I know of it too, is like that, or like whatever
It is.
Dante's Seven Levels of Hell, whatever that is. I
All of
think
the
that's
literature they
symbolic.
pick from it. And that's why it's so hard for me to not see it as intentional upon like the filmmaker, the David and Andrew, the writer, because it's so baked into the script and into the film that it's a smart decision, and I'm really glad they went for it, because like I can think of other films. Have you guys seen the OG Wicker Man from
No,
the 70s? Okay, it's strange, but it has a similar thing where like the symbolisms and the illusions and like and these like ideologies that are kind of operating under the actual plot, that like you really, if you're looking for it, you're gonna get it, but otherwise you're gonna be sat there like, why is this happening? Like this doesn't make much sense as to what we just saw before. And that takes me immediately out, because sure, as like people who had a great courtesy and a privilege to go and study this and are going to try to pursue this, like we're able to see that and like take it apart and kind of make our adjustments on it. But just like if you're going to see a movie, like you're just spending your money, especially now where it's so expensive to see a movie, and like that's what you're giving people to enjoy, that's crazy.
yeah, two movies I can think of that fall under the like you have to get the symbolism to get it are Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson, and then Charlie Kaufman's most recent movie, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Those two just go off the rails in a way where I'm like, I don't know what the hell you're doing anymore, man. Like nothing is happening. I mean, I see there's intention. You're not bothering to make it clear, so I'm not gonna bother trying to unpack it because this is just boring. I don't know if that was what you were going for, but
No, 100, because I remember the trailer for that. I just looked it up. And he's an interesting screenwriter anyway. His movies are a bit out there, but yeah, there's like a certain wavelength you have to be on for, especially with him, for that film to work. And if you're not on
yeah.
it, if you're not on that same kind of agreement, then you're gonna be a little confused as to what you're watching, which can be to like the success of a project if I think it's done and it's executed kind of meticulously, and it's almost hard to fall off that. And like Fleabag, like if you're not into that, like if you're not into that, being able to figure out when something's actually happening and when something isn't happening, that show is really not going to work for you, because
well, I think Fleabag is at least like there is a literal plot to that story that you're interested in, regardless of like what you think about her headspace and like when what you're seeing is representative and when it's real. I think there's enough grounding there that you can just watch Fleabag and be invested in surface level story between like the main characters. I guess I see what you're saying. Personally, I wouldn't put Fleabag in that like inaccessibly symbolic category.
Interesting, because I do know a few people who like her talking to the camera was just they couldn't get into it. Like they were just like they were in one ear and out the other, and they weren't able to get kind of into what the show was doing or just follow it.
Okay, maybe. I suppose I haven't heard that kind of feedback.
They were older. I will admit they were older. Everyone younger among our generation who are more predisposed to something that breaks the fourth wall like that has only sung praises. But I have talked to a few of older people in my life, and I've asked them, and they try to keep up with everything, and they usually share the general public's opinion, but not with Fleabag. It was just a little too out there for them. They wanted something a bit more traditional, which You know, there's a lane for everyone, especially with streaming.
Very true.
But I think that's really everything for tone for me. Like, there's not a lot of heavy crime mythology or religious or faith-based films that I could really compare this to like draw enough contrast and be like, you know, this is how it succeeds and this is how it fails. But to me, this is just, of all, since there isn't a lot, this is how I would do it. I would use it as my plot device or my character kind of starting point like they do with John Doe, and then go from there. But I wouldn't flush it out and make it the star of the show, especially not when he's such a heinous villain and they put him in his corner, because that's the proper thing to do, and not give him a whole movie like you said with Joker.
Yeah, I also think, to your like genre point, I don't think anyone would ever mistake this for a religious movie. Like, there's, despite its subject matter and the religious imagery, like it's not playing in that too heavily. So
Nope.
I think that helps. I also don't think it, from my perspective, it is not disrespectful to Christianity in that way. I mean, I suppose you could read it as like John Doe is this hardcore Christian character that maybe is not like, to some people's eyes, maybe he wouldn't be representing Christians well. I don't think that would be a problem, truly. But I suppose it's good that it walks that line. In that sense, it succeeds also. And it just works like it is a crime movie, or like, I don't know if I want to call it mystery, but detective story. Like, it hits all the genre things for that. So if you're looking for that kind of thing, like, it's giving you that genre, like, it's checking those boxes. So I think it covers itself well in that way. It's not like it has to try hard, or it doesn't seem like it's trying hard to do that. It does it quite seamlessly, which probably means it was very hard, but it looks seamless.
I agree. And I wouldn't call it a mystery either. I only recently, and I think, yeah, it was just from Wikipedia. I think I saw it as crime mystery, and I was like, okay, well, if that's what they're saying. But I always read it as more of a thriller, and I think it comes down to like you were saying, the genre beats of mystery, and like with Glass Onion, like, and Knives Out, like we were talking about before we started recording, like those are just proper mysteries, and everything about the mystery genre is just exemplified in those films, and they just breathe it. But like this, to me, maybe it's because we don't meet him until there's 30 minutes left in the film, and even before that we see him and that like chase scenes like 15 or 20 minutes before, so like I guess you could say 45 minutes. But like, yeah, I see this so much more as a crime thriller than a crime mystery. But
Yeah,
tomatoes,
I'll concur with
tomatoes.
that.
But yeah, for you, Evan.
Are
Guess
we into my topic?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, we've gotten into parts of this a little. My topic was about character worldviews. I was thinking how this could be a pretty forgettable movie with tropey characters if you had done it without giving them worldviews. Like, there's a version of this where Somerset is a jaded veteran, Mills is a loose cannon rookie, and John Doe is just a crazy serial killer, and they're all one note. And I think a very ungenerous reading of this could see it as that, but that would be a very shallow reading, in my opinion. But because all of these characters have distinct worldviews, it allows it to have these really rich themes, and I think flesh out the characters in a way that's subtle. Like, I didn't think of them as being super deep the first time, and probably not the second time I watched it, but I really came to appreciate it this time around. I think it helps, actually, that we don't get a lot of backstory. Like, we get a little bit of backstory with Mills, but I don't think it does much to tell us how his worldview has been formed and why he has this kind of pessimism that he's like flirting with, where he does kind of want to just give up and give in to apathy. I think it's much more effective to see him just going through the world that way, and we don't need a traumatic backstory to justify that to us. I think that helps. Same with the other characters too. We don't get backstories for them, but I was noticing it the most with him. You could have easily, with John Doe, just made him be like, I'm crazy, I want to kill people. But he has a worldview. It's not a good or, in my opinion, valid worldview, but it is one that he is standing by and living through with his killings. Like, he just sees the world as evil all over. And that adds a lot of depth to his killings instead of just making them trauma porn shock value. And with the other three, like, it's not like a binary worldview that they have that's like completely different from his, where they see the world as all good, but it is like grounded. Like when I'm watching it and I see these other three characters, Tracy, Mills, and Somerset, the few times where we kind of see their worldviews come out, it feels lived in. It doesn't feel simplistic. I think it helps that Mills, like I said, is not like a one-note rookie. First of all, he has 5 years of experience, so he actually has some like time and age to back up his theories and stuff. That just makes it feel more nuanced and lived in. And I think that really informs, like, Jelani, I hear what you're saying. It was toward the beginning, I think, that you said a lot of the stuff in the beginning didn't really keep you hooked as much. And I believe I actually kind of had a similar reaction. Like, it was slow for me the first time, maybe the second as well. And now I was going into this looking for, like, something more, seeing if there were themes that I'd missed. And I think I was able to find some. So I know you don't tend to focus on theme as much as I do when you're looking at stuff. But I hope that if and when you decide to rewatch this, that will age as well for you as it has for me. Because I know there were some investigation scenes the first time around where I was like, this could be faster. And maybe that's still true. But there's stuff happening there that I absolutely did not see on a thematic level the first two times. I went for a while there and I have more, but did either of you want to throw in points?
I had a really similar experience to you this time because I didn't pick up on any really of the character work or the thematic work that was baked into this film either times that I had watched it. I enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed the film all other 3 or 4 times, but I never really realized everything that was going on. And especially, like you're saying, the worldviews are so specific and they are so lived in and they are so unwavering. Even if you're somebody like Somerset, who in my mind really can do no wrong. Like, sure, he might be set in his ways and he might be crabby, but you know, he's right. He has a lot of wisdom and he should be listened to most of the times. But then you have somebody like the John Doe who you watch and you're just completely disgusted by, but because they crafted it and they're able to share this space and this air together and the way these lines are read, it is so amazing. Like these different worldviews clashing and they're both given even time, even air, even though internally you're feeling like, oh my God, this person's disgusting. And of course I'm on these guys' side. They both are shared in this lived in space. And I think that's what makes the movie so interesting. Because like our old professor Bill Fenley would say, you don't go to the theater to watch normal people acting normally. Like this is an experience that no one's been in a car with a homicidal maniac and 2 detectives before. And it's like, wow, being put right in between all of that and just letting those characters go out is like, to me, kind of showing how successful they were at those themes and those worldviews kind of baking. Because when they collide, how can you not watch?
Yeah, and I think it lends itself well beyond just the like serial killer thing. Like the first time I saw this, really thought that the only place where there was theme at all is the conversation that Mills and Somerset have in the bar, where Somerset says, I don't think I can live in a place that endorses apathy. And now I'm like, oh wow, no, that is absolutely not the only place there's theme. That theme runs through the entire fucking movie. Like, it's in every scene. I feel like it gives some level of validity to both, and to the point that I'm not sure exactly, like, where I stand. I'm not fully, like, I'm partly with Mills. It gives enough, like, acknowledgement to John Doe's worldview, as in saying, like, you can understand how, looking at the world the way it is, you can see why somebody would think that it's evil to the last person. But again, I don't think the movie is endorsing that. But Mills and Somerset, and Tracy as well, I think, are kind of dealing with the more normal people conflict of that, which to me, where I see it having the biggest like real life implications is how do you process the bad news that you hear, like about just general world stuff, not like bad news for you personally, but like you hear that some tragedy happens every other day if you listen to the news, or it can feel that way a lot of times. And Somerset is disappointed by how apathetic everyone is. And I'd like to side with that, but at the same time, I get the other side of the argument that he acknowledges as well of like, yeah, we can't do anything about, the war in Ukraine as individuals. So is it worth it for us to be super emotionally invested in that? Maybe, maybe not. And maybe it's bad that we turn ourselves off from it, or maybe it's kind of the only way to exist. Sorry to go dark, but I did warn about that at the beginning. And I saw it a little bit to extend it out a bit more is the way that Mills is so quick in every part of the movie to paint John Doe, even before they meet him, as this just one-note crazy serial killer. And I found that really interesting this time, thinking about like people who in real life we do think of as these villainous people. It actually, unfortunately, ages quite well. Like when Kevin Spacey says to Mills, "You find it very easy to write me off as insane, as this monster." And Mills says, "Yes, that's incredibly comfortable for me." That is exactly how I feel about real life Kevin Spacey. I know that he is like a full human who's not like evil to the core. I also have zero problem with us treating him that way when we talk about him, because I think that has uses, and it's easier to do that, and I don't even think that's necessarily bad. So maybe I'm expanding that out beyond what was intended, but that was kind of the theme that became clear to me this time, is like the Somerset way of engaging with the world is what he says, where he's like, if we catch John Doe, we'll maybe be satisfied if he's literally Satan, but he's not. And I think he is just more inclined to engage with that reality of John Doe is just a guy, and that's a lot more uncomfortable than thinking about the fact that he is as human as the rest of us.
Mm-hmm. It's easier to paint that other than it is to see the similarities, which is why I love that's what I loved this watch through. Like the scene you're talking about, like that whole scene in the precinct where he's just like, I bet he dresses up in like women's clothing and spreads peanut butter on himself. And then Somerset's like, no, like he's methodical. He got someone chained to a bed for a year, put tubes into their genitals. Like this is somebody, and he said, and worst of all, he's patient. And then that all comes to, like you said, that all comes to a head in that line of dialogue from John Doe when he says, it's more comfortable for you to believe that I'm not here, that I'm not a human, that I'm some other thing. And that's how those stories told these kind of truths. These stories like Paradise Lost and Dante's Inferno. And it's so refreshing in 95 to get, like you said, it's not glorifying, it's not vindicating, it's not saying you should agree with John Doe, but it's making the villain human. The villain is three-dimensional. He believes 100% of what he says. He's not just a tipping point because the protagonist needs a wall to come against. He's his own thing. And that's the scariest part. He has his own MO. And like he says, I'm only here because I want to be here. If I didn't want to be here, I wouldn't be here. And that's chilling.
Right, he actually follows through with the I planned to get captured villain thing that has become even more common since then. Like, he does turn himself in.
Did any themes jump out to you, Jelani, as a first-time viewer? Were you just kind of letting it all sink in and you didn't think about it like that?
Nah, I didn't think about it like that.
I don't blame you. I think it's hard to really see a theme truly. Like, you can pull bits and pieces and then, like, draw together your own interpretation after one watch through, but I feel like you need to watch something, let it do what it do, and then come back to it a second time and actually be like, okay, I know what's going to happen. Let me watch this right and see what's actually going on. And that's when you can actually find a more honest reading for theme. And that's true for me. This movie, it took like 4 or 5 watch throughs and some maturing, and now I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, there's a reason why that kind of conversation has to be how we introduce Somerset with the cop who's just, he doesn't care. We see Somerset cares, he cares about the kid, the cop doesn't. We see Mills comes right up. All right, they have a conversation about caring. All right, Mills isn't like the other ones. All right, he's a cop. And I'm starting to see these different themes. And I'm like, okay, yeah, these are things that actually mattered. That kid me would have just been like, oh, why are they talking? So I really enjoyed this film. Like I said, a lot of films, like maybe Chicken Little or Hoodwinked, that I've revisited, have not held up, but this film has continued to surprise me, and I enjoy that.
I'm having a hard time thinking about what would my 10-year-old brain think of this movie? I can't imagine.
Literally, like, if it wasn't any of, like, the crime scenes where they were showing some nasty stuff, where it was just, like you were saying, like, just, like, gore porn, or it wasn't, like, the ending, whoop, all over my head. Like, their conversation about a baby, and him saying not to have it, and what that means, and it's up to you, which was, like, crazy to hear, like, with everything going on, to say it's your choice whether you want to have it or not. I was like, wow, in 95, this was in the movies, and we've gone that far back in time in 2022. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then saying, like, but if you do have it, spoil that kid. I'm for sure was, like, playing with something when that was happening. I was probably so bored.
I love that scene, though.
I love it. It's so deep.
I think my favorite line of the movie might be, I am positive that I did the right thing, and yet not a day goes by when I don't wish I had acted differently. God, that hits. That's a line right there. I was thinking, too, that this was the first time I'd seen this after seeing Everything Everywhere. I feel like they are kind of dealing with the same thing, obviously in very, very different ways, but I was feeling some similarities.
I agree. Especially, I got that vibe with, like, just their overall bonding, like, seeing Somerset and Mills become a partnership, and how he just wanted to write him off in the beginning and just, like, it's his last week, whatever, I'm not going to get invested in this guy and let me just get off, and, like, people around here are trash anyway, they don't really care about the job, to, like, that dinner scene. Like, I never remembered, like, that dinner scene with the train, that never stuck out to me before, but that was one of my favorite scenes, because it's such a dark and dour film. It was light, there was some laughing, and seeing Morgan Freeman, that was a great laugh. Some actors, when they laugh, you're just like, oh god, that wasn't it, but that was a fantastic laugh. It was so, the way he, like, breaks it and then he fully goes in, it was so good. And seeing them bond, I was like, I actually kind of feel good for this, which is crazy because you shouldn't feel good watching that movie. That movie is it's full of just terribleness.
I feel like that's such an important scene, though.
It is,
for a number of reasons, and it feels like the first time you watch it, it feels like, what is this doing here? There's no plot happening, but it's everything else that's happening.
Literally is everything else. And it's so well done. Because from that point on, they're just partners. That was it. That's all they needed. They needed a dinner together. And then they had each other's backs.
Yeah, I feel like it's so important to have that as, like, showing these two can have a friendship. Even if it's, like, maybe a begrudging one, there's at least some respect there. Like, when they're working in Mill's living room, like, that's going beyond coworkers. You're kind of friends now. And I think it's also important to see how different Mills is when he's around Tracy than he is on the job. You just feel how at home he is with her.
I never even thought of that or picked up on that, but that's 100% true. Wow. He's so different with her. I'm just, like, rewatching the scene in my head now.
It's such a different performance for Brad Pitt than, like, everything later, too. Like, I feel like we never get to see him be unhinged like this anymore. He's just cool now, and in this he was, like, kind of whiny. I don't think we've seen whiny Brad Pitt almost ever. What's in the box? What's in the fucking box? I remember the first time I saw it. The first time I saw it, I remember being like, this is either the greatest performance ever or the cheesiest thing I've ever seen, and I cannot decide. Now I've settled on that I think it's good. I remember that being my initial reaction.
What was in the box, guys?
A fresh baked pie.
Is that why Morgan Freeman had that reaction? Oh God, no.
He's a diabetic.
John Doe has the upper hand now.
He's
It's
like,
pecan
oh
pie.
God, it's taking me down.
I wanted to ask, what other good movies does the villain win in?
Oh,
Well,
interesting.
the two I was gonna bring up, Watchmen is one where the villain wins.
A good one.
Watchmen the comic is considered
I said movie.
good. Well, they made a movie that for some reason changes the ending to that comic, but it's essentially the same beat of the villain winning. This is one that I don't enjoy as much, but No Country for Old Men, spoilers of course, is a movie where the bad guy kind of wins. I've heard it broken down as like super thematically resonant. I did not get it. That is a movie that people love that I have never really been able to appreciate. But that's another example. I mean, if you want to call the iceberg the villain, then Titanic, maybe. But I don't consider that it. Do you have examples of good movies where the villain wins?
Fletcher.
I feel like I've heard of that. Remind me. Oh, you're talking Whiplash. Agree.
And then, I got to bring my comic book movies when I run out of non-comic book movies to mention. Civil War and Infinity War.
I'm gonna disagree with you a bit on Civil War. I don't think that's a full win.
No, that's not a strong one.
And Infinity War is not a permanent win, not to like refute both of yours. But
Well, it was a win for that universe, and then they
Fair
cheated
enough.
in reverse time. Bastards.
but it's a villain win with an asterisk.
Yeah.
I mean, the only one I can think of is another Kevin Spacey.
Oh, me too. I think I know the one you're talking about, but maybe we don't want to say it for spoiler reasons.
No, I know what you're
Yeah.
talking.
If you know, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, going to the boilerplate. Upcoming episodes. Our next one that we have planned is a 2-for-1, where we are going to be putting Lucy and Limitless head to head against each other in a versus episode of brain enhancing drug movies. And then after that, we're going to do iRobot. I believe Limitless is on HBO still. I don't think Lucy is streaming anywhere. Our Patreon is $1 a month. You can get bonus episodes, and I think I'm close to getting the watch-alongs up. I'm still working through some technical difficulties there. YouTube channel, we have that. I have finally been able to start uploading the old podcast episodes there again. Or, not the old ones, just all of them. And should be a video essay coming pretty soon on Kingsman 1 and 2. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Our logo is by Kelsey Hendry. We, after talking it over, will no longer be on Twitter. I will not either. I won't speak for either of you guys. But I am still on Letterboxd at ev_Wes. Are you guys still anywhere?
Instagram, Angelani T. Kelly. That's it.
And YouTube, right?
Yeah,
Basically.
like if you want to.
Or no,
you're
yeah,
on
yeah,
that.
you changed it.
Angelani T. Kelly on that too. I haven't uploaded in forever, but it's there.
David, where are you this time?
Like Somerset. I'll be around. I'll be around.
I was
That's what he
waiting
says.
for it
That's
in
the
the
line.
box.
I'll be around.
No, but I mean, if I could fit in the box, I would be, but I wish.
Well, what's in it?
Gwyneth Paltrow's head.
I thought it was a pie.
And that pie. And a lot of her goop, her product, that goop. A lot of
That's
the
all
goop.
Gwyneth Paltrow's head is. It's just made of goop. Okay, so if that's it, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
All right, bye, guys.